Hello, and welcome to Connecting Hope. In today's episode, we will be talking with our Office of Inspector General on the topic of integrity in action. MDHS lives by four core values: excellence, compliance, empathy, and integrity. And integrity is woven through the full work of our Office of Inspector General. Since 2020, the Office of Inspector General has been strengthened and worked to be not only redemptive and restorative, but also take on a preventative role to rooting out fraud, waste, and abuse in all programs, internal and external, of the Mississippi Department of Human Services. We hope that today's conversation will be informative and help you understand the role that the agency plays in making sure that our programs are delivered with the highest integrity. Welcome to our OIG, Office of Inspector General team. It's comprised of three entities, which is first our Division of Investigations, our Benefit Recovery Unit, and our Fair Hearings. And we're honored that our guest would join us today for Connecting Hope, Integrity in Action inside MDHS OIG operations. Let's start by this. Start with, to my left, Debrisha Blaylock. Debrisha, talk about, introduce yourself and then talk about what you do here at the agency, and then we'll move on to Josh and then Sylvester.
Yes, my name is Debrisha Blaylock. I'm the director of the Benefit Recovery Unit, and the Benefit Recovery Unit pretty much establishes, reviews, monitors, and tracks all of the overpayments attributed to benefit errors for all of the programmatic divisions at MDHS.
It's a big job. Look forward to learning more about what you and your team are doing to bring excellence, compliance, integrity, and empathy to the programs of MDHS. Next, our second guest is Josh Kogel. Josh is head of investigations at MDHS. In other words, here comes the law.
Yes, my name is Josh Kegel. I'm the Director of Investigations. The Investigations Unit is a law enforcement division with inside DHS. We conduct, obviously, investigations involving the 9 programmatic divisions with inside the agency, namely SNAP and TANF, daycare, LIHEAP, weatherization, and not to also leave out internal affairs. We also investigate our employees as well.
So along that lines are also our hearings. Whenever maybe there's a finding of an error and it needs to be recouped, or even a denial of a program and somebody feels like that maybe they were denied an error or there's some issues, we have a hearings unit, and every client has their rights and their responsibilities. And within OIG, that's one of the things you guys uphold. But within that is Sylvester Goss and our hearings team. Sylvester, introduce yourself and a little bit about what you do.
Okay, thank you. My name is Sylvester Goss. I am Director of Administrative Hearings, and I manage a team of 4 hearing officers and 4 legal assistants. And basically what we do all day, every day, is a lot of hearings. We do SNAP disqualification hearings, we do TANF disqualification hearings, TANF fair hearings. We also do sub-grant hearings. We do DCCD, which is child care. We do those hearings as well. So we're the hearings branch of the agency. If somebody feels like they have an adverse ruling that they don't agree with, they can appeal it, request a fair hearing, and we will basically give them a hearing.
And that speaks to a lot of people thinking that when you hear investigations or benefit recovery or hearings, they may initially turn to a more negative mindset. And essentially, you guys are here not only to protect the integrity of the program and the agency, but also to support the needs of the clients. And that's one thing that I hope and also the needs of a community, but hope to explain to our listeners that you guys are working to strengthen these programs and make sure that integrity is there so that they can be here to sustain lives that they're meant to support. So what we'll do is first look really at our investigations division. Kind of, Josh, you mentioned some of the things y'all do, but let's talk a little bit about maybe some of the types of cases that you guys handle, and then how those investigations may kind of see themselves going, where you guys may receive tips, and how people can be a part of that process.
Sure. I'll start with how the tips are received. That's kind of the onset of any investigation. So we have a 7-member data analyst team. So when people call, email, they can go to the website and file a tip. They can email. They can call the 1-800 number. They can also snail mail. Everything but carrier pigeons and smoke signals, we take everything in. Then the data analyst teams or the investigative analysts will vet those by taking the tip and the complaint, looking in our systems and see what the clients are reporting or what they're reporting to us. They'll vet them. Sometimes it doesn't have to go any further investigations. There's enough information at the tabletop investigation, as I call them, and they can substantiate that and pass that along to benefit recovery unit. There's also another path where they'll need more field work. It may warrant surveillance, talking to people, issuing subpoenas and warrants. If it gets to that point, then it goes to an investigative team. The investigative team has 20 field agents all throughout the state, and they're out there working and chasing down these tips and these leads. Again, once they wrap it up, if they substantiate it, then it goes to benefit recovery unit, and they get a dollar amount based on what they discover that the clients were not reporting. In SNAP, like I said before, SNAP's our workhorse. That's the bulk of what we do. The 3 main categories that we'll deal in SNAP are clients not reporting their household correctly, leaving out income, and sometimes those are synonymous together, household composition and failure to report income. And then the third one is people selling their food stamps for cash. And those are the 3 main areas we'll work on when we're doing the investigations.
So one thing that you brought out is that tip line. Obviously, phone calls and website, some of those can be done anonymously if necessary. But along those lines, that investigations and fraud prevention, and that's the posture we want to take. We want to prevent fraud before it can even happen, and having an investigations unit plays that role in being kind of a awareness of fraud, and that's one of the things I think that the communications team has been working closely with your team to make people aware of how to protect their benefits. Y'all also investigate, benefits that are stolen from the clients. Unfortunately, that happens. There are predators out there that would like to victimize the clients, and we're here to protect them. But along those lines, you mentioned your sources. That relationship that we maintain with our clients is critical to receiving the best tips. Talk a little bit about what a client may want to look for in their community. We know that our clients want to protect the program because they need them, and so you and I've had some conversations to that point. Let's go a little bit further into the client.
Sure. Most of the people that report these understand that these are taxpayer funded. That are funding this benefit program, and everyone wants to make sure that the right people are getting the benefits that they need. We're not against people getting benefits. We just want to make sure that they're reporting the stuff correctly and they're getting what's due in their eligibility. Unfortunately, there's a small percentage of people that are trying to game the system and get more than they're entitled to. And so when fellow citizens see that, they call us. They call us. I know years ago, before we had an analytical team, the investigators took all the tips. And, you're talking to some pretty angry people, and rightly so. But most times when they call us, they know that person intimately. They're in the community. They know who's in their home. They know who's married to whose kids go to what church or school. And so they have good information to relate to us, give us a good starting point.
And I think that's a positive point, is that the majority of our clients that we encounter, they hold tight to that integrity of the program. And that's a good piece that the OIG team is doing to build a relationship in communities. And that's the importance of making sure that as we move something through to benefit recovery and even fair hearings, that relationship is continued and strengthened. So I appreciate the work that y'all do. You mentioned some of the common fraud schemes, whether it's misreporting of income, household composition, or selling benefits. What are some other fraud pieces? We specifically mentioned some SNAP piece, but also some of the other programs that y'all are responsible for making sure that integrity is held to.
Sure. The second program I would say is right behind SNAP would be daycare. You have a lot of these centers that are falsifying records to receive benefits for kids not attending. The second piece of that too, you have parents that are not fully reporting income to make themselves eligible to receive daycare vouchers. So there's two parts to that. With some changes in some of the policy, where it was kid in attendance due to COVID, now you just mostly see them miscoding on purpose, to get full-time payment for kids that should have been part-time or never attended.
And that's a process, again, that not only through our own programmatic quality controls, they do reviews of those cases, and some of those could be potentially pushed down through, again, the compliance program pushing down into the investigations component. So all of these pieces that have been strengthened over the past 5 years here at the agency have been really to benefit investigations and program integrity.
Yes, sir.
So one other piece is we talked about the partnership and collaboration with our clients, but one thing I've happened recently was our partnership with law enforcement in DeSoto County for the investigation. Let's talk about collaboration on the local level with law enforcement. It's only been about 2.5, 3 years that you guys in investigations have had full law enforcement capabilities, and how has that relationship and collaboration with law enforcement on the ground been facilitated?
Yeah, July 1, 2021, we became a commissioned agency, and it really changed the game. You have law enforcement working with law enforcement again. We have a great working relationship with all the local sheriff's departments, police departments, even other state agencies, as well as our federal partners. There's a federal agency that does the same thing we do at a higher level and a bigger scale. And doors have been opening, collaborating with all these agencies. Like you said, DeSoto County, we went up there and, did a roundup all in one day. We did grand jury, got an indictment, and served the indictments all in 4 hours. And so it's been very helpful. I've been here 13 years, and I was here before being commissioned agency, and it was like pulling teeth trying to get another law enforcement agency to kind of go into some of these with us. But now I'm getting phone calls from agencies, and they see us what we're doing, and they want to get involved. So it's been phenomenal.
Awesome work that you guys are doing, and we just mentioned the DeSoto County. More and more we're finding and rooting out instances of fraud, waste, and abuse. Let's talk a little bit maybe also what you're doing internally, because we don't want to shine the spotlight only externally. It's the program integrity and making sure that our own staff are following our policies and procedures, and how investigations works with our compliance unit to ensure that that's happening.
Yes, sir. I do it, I pass the word out at every new hire orientation. I go there to speak, and I pass out both our hotline information to the employees and also my personal contact information to employees, that if they see something, they report it, they can report right to me, because we work under strict confidentiality. We're not going to divulge any of the sources or information. We're just going to look into it and investigate to its fullest. Unfortunately, yeah, we have caught several employees on, either falsifying internal reports to get more money in travel or whatnot. We've also have employees that are also recipients of some of the state benefits, and they're doing the same thing as anyone else outside the agency, where they're falsifying their household composition or leaving off some of the income. They may have 2 or 3 jobs, and they're just reporting just this income. So it's unfortunate, but yes, it does happen, and we we investigate them to the fullest, and then in some cases we have prosecuted them.
And if necessary, we involve other external resources if needed.
Yes, sir.
I do appreciate the OIG team and the seriousness by which you take your job. Irrespective of where the fraud is happening, you make it open. Our teams are trained, our divisions are trained and informed on how to report these issues and to be a part of the solution, bringing complete transparency, but really approaching it from a preventative measure. If we can educate people on the front side, then we can prevent fraud on the backside. And so I appreciate the work you do. So Josh, go ahead, Sylvester.
If I can just chime in, you talked about educating the public and educating internally. OIG team just recently did a fraud prevention week where the team sent out emails to everybody in the agency, educating them on what they can do if they see fraud. And I thought that was a very successful program.
I'm very appreciative of that campaign that the OIG team did pull together and collaborated with, because it speaks to the value of this agency. If we're going to hold our clients to the highest standard, we actually hold ourselves to a higher standard and accountability and the expectation that when Mr. Anderson came here, we all know in March of 2020, he instituted the 4 values of this agency. Excellence, that we do everything with excellence, and that campaign was excellent work. But compliance to the rules, integrity, and that integrity means that we are working within the rules to uphold the rules, even when no one seems to be looking. But what's really cool is we've created a program that there are oversights, and there are multiple layers of oversight as these things come in and people are being held accountable. And so, to your point, Sylvester, great job on that, and holding ourselves to the highest standard is really where fraud prevention begins. And I'm thankful for the work of that team. So Josh, your team's identified it. You mentioned that it comes into data analytics, and sometimes it may be pushed in straight to benefit recovery, or it could go into an investigation because it needs to maybe uncover some deeper parts. But really, once we've identified it, it goes to another process. Unfortunately, there has been a misappropriation of taxpayer funds and a breaking of that fiduciary trust to the taxpayer. And so the agency has in place methods through Debrice's team to make sure that the taxpayer is paid whole. So let's segue over here to Debrice and the powerful work that your team does. Let's talk a little bit more about what is the Benefit Recovery Unit. Again, going deeper, that when you receive a case, what are those processes that you're going to start going through?
Yes, so the Benefit Recovery Unit is comprised of 10 individuals. We have 2 small different divisions. We have our accounting division within the Benefit Recovery Unit, and then we have our program auditors. The accounting division is solely responsible for getting the payments in every day, monitoring and tracking those overpayments, make sure they are being applied back to the program in which it should be. But then we have our program auditors who are daily reviewing the cases that the investigations division is sending in, as well as the county offices. And so we receive what we call claim referrals in all day, every day in real time. And so these program auditors are reviewing these cases, these claim referrals, and determining what type of overpayment it is. The Benefit Recovery Unit has 3 types of overpayments. Our biggest overpayment does come from suspected intentional fraud cases, but then we have the inadvertent household error cases where the clients are, reporting, just say at the recertification, not really understanding the rules and regulations, but they're not reporting everything as should. But then we have also the agency error cases in which the agency may have issued out more benefits than we should have. No matter what the type of overpayment it is, we have to recover all of the funds back to make sure that they're going back into the program and make sure that we're providing the services to the clients that are in need.
So that speaks a little bit to the question of benefit recovery supporting program integrity and strengthening that. Talk a little bit about that overall effect that recovering those benefits, no matter what source of the error, plays in having the strongest and keeping the strongest integrity in those programs?
I think it definitely shows integrity because like we said, no matter what the type, no matter the circumstances, no matter the situation, no matter who, what, when, where, we have to make sure that we are taking our best efforts to recover the funds back, the benefits back, and provide them back into the program so that the clients can get them. Now, most of our programs are federally funded programs, so we do have assistance. We have collection entities that help us collect those funds back. But we also try to work with those clients first to set up some type of repayment plan before we get to those collection efforts. So Benefit Recovery Unit, we're constantly talking to those clients every day. We are pretty much explaining to them, what caused the overpayment, and then we're working with them to try to pay it back the best way that we can.
So along those lines, one of the things I've noticed is even internally, there's policies and procedures that when those repayments are coming in, the agency has processes in which you follow to make sure those are credited to people's accounts as well. So it's not just going after and setting an amount for somebody to repay, it's keeping track and making sure that accounts are credited.
Absolutely. And so per our federal guidelines, we can set up repayment plans. Depending on the program, the rules vary. And so some programs, the clients or the providers have 1 year to pay it back, but that time frame can also extend up to 5 years. So it's not like, oh, you have to pay this money back right here, right now. We try to work with that program or whomever that is to make sure that we are also following the federal guidelines.
So along those lines, what would be, and this is really a question within benefit recovery, fair hearings, investigations, what are some strategies that y'all would give to whether it's an entity that is partnering with us under a subgrant or our clients or a daycare center? What are some keys? We're going to shift into a prevention mode because once we get to fair hearings, it means that there's probably been a finding, or even, as we mentioned, somebody disagrees with their determination. But what are prevention? Because crime can be prevented, and it's easier to prevent, hopefully, than it is to prosecute. And that's ultimately our goal, is that integrity. So maybe what are some tips for prevention?
I can speak to that from a hearings perspective. Most of the hearings that we have involve like SNAP benefit cases, and basically it involves not following the rules. If the rules require you to report your income, report your income. If you are working, tell the caseworker that you're working. Don't misrepresent your employment status. I would say if you follow the rules, that will go a long way in terms of you preventing a disqualification hearing. So most of what I see is just simply people either not being aware of the rules or not following the rules. So make sure, I would say, number one, when you apply for, and we were talking about SNAPs, when you apply, you complete your SNAP application, just make sure if you have any questions or concerns, talk to the caseworker about it. And from my perspective, the caseworkers are pretty responsive. They can help you with your case. So if you have a question about whether or not you should report your income, call your caseworker.
And that's an important piece, is as a client or a subgrantee, a partner, staying in contact with your case manager or the programmatic division that's administering those funds. If you have a question, ask it. There are no bad questions. If we fail to answer the question or receive a question, then yes, there could be some omissions and some errors, and we want to try to prevent those on the other side. Josh, we talk about protecting the benefit of the clients. One of the things you could potentially see is whether it's trafficking benefits, which is selling of benefits, or even sometimes skimming and other components of retail fraud there. What are some tips to prevent and protect the clients on the front side as well?
Well, that's a good question. And when it comes to skimming, It's the skimming scheme started around 2022, and it has picked up pretty rapidly. Although we are working with our federal partners, because our jurisdiction is only within our state, we're also in works with the Attorney General's office and our third-party vendor to help put some safeguards in. One of the safeguards that we've put in, we took the initiative of putting in, is no soft pins. And so that means like you can't have a pin like 1, 2, 3, 4 or 0, 0, 0. Surprisingly, a lot of people have those as their pins. So now we're blocking them. They can't use. They have to have more complex pins. We're in the works of possibly enabling or deactivating, if you would, I should say, out-of-state and online shopping. We're still going to give the client the ability to opt back in and do it if they want to, but we're going to kind of push that to safeguard them. And that's on our side. But as far as the client side of protecting themselves from skimming is, we've had these, as you know, these huge campaigns of trying to educate and inform the clients of changing their PIN, being aware of where they're at. And look at the device that they're using. If it looks a little off, tug on it a little bit, see if it pops up. That's what these skimmers are. They overlay the real device and they're capturing that data. And then once they got it, they're off to the races. They're putting it somewhere else and using it in another state, and it's gone before the end client even knows. When it comes to changing the pins or changing their PIN, we encourage them to do it usually within hours, if not a day before the benefits are loaded up on their cards, because these thieves know when they're going to hit the card. And typically we've seen in patterns that they're gonna draw down all the benefits around midnight or 1 in the morning. They wait for it to hit and they're out there trying to grab it. So I know most people are asleep at that time. They know they're gonna be asleep at that time, so that's when they're most active. But if you can go in and change your PIN at that time and after you use it, I know it's very cumbersome sometimes to change the PIN, but it's to safeguard themselves.
You make that point is a lot of people think, okay, it's going to be the 1st or the 15th like we would normally our check. It's really staggered based on where you are in the alphabet and other components of when those benefits hit people's cards. Knowing when your disbursement day, when you're going to pull those cards down, if it's let's just say the 13th, noon on the 12th, set a timer to go in to your Connect EBT or get online and change that PIN, especially if you've recently used your card, because unfortunately we can't replace those benefits after December 20th, 2024. And unfortunately that's a sad piece to tell our clients who need these benefits and rely upon these benefits to support their family. So that is one thing. Know when that disbursement day is coming, and then especially if you've used it maybe at a new retail outlet that you're unfamiliar with, go in and change that PIN and make sure that it's, again, we're going to prevent it from being simple, but monitoring your benefits, knowing what your balances are, and staying on top of it.
Yes, sir. So, as you said, after December 20th, 2024, the federal government stopped replacing those benefits. And although they're not being replaced, we encourage all the clients that if they still see those transactions that they didn't make, to report them. They can still report it. They can still fill out that attestation. We are still collecting that data to track where the victims are. We're trying to work, like I said, with other state agencies to investigate where these devices are. We're getting more proactive. We're getting into more software to track where these devices are. So we don't know if you're a victim if you're not telling us you're a victim, and these clients are the best people to tell us that they've been victimized. So we can, even though we can't make them whole, we can go after the fraudsters.
The more information we have, the more we can try to prevent. Unfortunately, in many cases, criminals are sometimes a step ahead on technology and their desire to steal. And unfortunately, we can't catch it without the information coming in. So we'll put a link to that page on our website to report the fraud and report stolen benefits. Please share that and make sure that it is getting out there, because again, we can't investigate that which we don't know about, and we can't protect that which we don't know is vulnerable. So we're working through that. One thing that I see there, we're going to segue away from prevention to Josh talks about investigation, Debrisha sending out findings letters for benefit recovery. At what point in all of this does it segue over to Tilvester's group of hearing officers to say, hey, we need to have a conversation about this? Let's talk about that process.
Okay. Well, specifically with Debrisha, the hot topic right now is tax offsets.
Okay.
When her division recover overpayments via state tax refund, via federal tax refund, the client suddenly is concerned, and they can request a fair hearing to dispute whether or not the offset was proper or not. So that's one way it makes it to my division. And right now, taxes is one of the main ways. Also, with Josh's team, when they go out and investigate, if they find, like, for example, a violation of household composition, they will send it to Debrisha's team. Debrisha's team will put the dollar amount, and then it comes to hearings for a determination whether or not that person is going to receive an intentional program violation. So everything feeds from investigations, analytics, BRU into administrative hearings, even the child care piece. I mean, when they go out and investigate and find a potential violation, we will hold a hearing to determine whether or not there is an actual violation.
Who is allowed to have a hearing, and at what point, what type of hearing might, depending on the type of violation they might have?
Okay. Let's talk about fair hearings. Okay. If a client has a adverse agency action that they don't agree with, they can request a fair hearing. And basically, that's the same with the tax offset. If they think the tax offset is not correct, they can request a fair hearing. With the child care centers, if the child care centers, it's going to be, if they find some violations with the child care center, we will schedule a hearing. The child care center will have an opportunity to bring forth evidence to show that what the investigator found is not true. So basically, everybody can have access to a hearing if they have an adverse decision.
So a good way to put it is it's not meant to be 100% punitive. It's actually redemptive and restorative in helping people understand their rights and their responsibilities. It's not just saying, okay, you're guilty, we found a problem. It's giving people a voice in their own.
Correct. We give them due process. We're not going to find an intentional program violation without giving you an opportunity to defend your actions or inactions.
So you might also have, you talk about fair hearings, other types of appeals that may come in.
SEP grants. When the Division of Monitoring goes out, investigates a SEP grant, and the Division of Monitoring will issue a final decision letter saying that here's what we found when we came out. We will schedule a hearing, and we were talking about prevention earlier. When the sub-grantee gets the final decision letter, they will have several opportunities to try to work with the Division of Monitoring before it even gets to a hearing to try to resolve the issue. One of the things that we recently incorporated with the sub-grant hearing is a mandatory mediation process between the sub-grantee and the Division of Monitoring, because what I was finding in some cases, we would come to the hearing and discover that the parties had not even talked in like 6 months. And a lot of the issues could have been resolved before the hearing. So we are working diligently to try to resolve a lot of issues before we even get to the hearing process. And another problem that was coming up was the sub-grantee would show up at the hearing with all of this evidence, okay? And we're trying to eliminate that process as well. the Division of Monitoring needs an opportunity to review that evidence before the hearing. So if they give it to them before the hearing, some of the findings can be cleared. So we're working to make the process better for everybody in a nutshell.
It's really connecting and being open, forthright, keeping communication. That's an interesting piece that's kind of flowed out of our conversation today. Your communication and the need to be in connection with clients and other partners, your need to be in connection with other divisions within the agency, but also within the realm of financial institutions and the client themselves. And again, giving everybody that fair due process, that they're coming in, they're afforded the opportunity to state their case. And I believe that speaks to really that integrity side, that we're not assuming somebody's done something wrong. We're going to get to the bottom of it and find a lawful and really along with the guidelines and the federal guidance of how we recoup the funds, we investigate, and we provide that process. That's that rights that every client, that every individual has. And it's, again, it's not meant to be punitive, it's meant to be redemptive and supportive. But one thing I want to look about is what would the fair hearing process look like, the timeline? Because it seems like it's step 1, step 2, step 3. And I don't think it really works that way.
Well, with fair hearings, you can get a fair hearing pretty quickly, because with fair hearings, you're only required to give 10 days notice. With the SNAP disqualification hearings, they have to have 30 days notice. But you can get a fair hearing fairly quickly. So if a person requests a fair hearing, typically within 30 days, that hearing will be scheduled. And the way the hearing, what it looks like, I mean, fair hearings, typically, you're going to have a representative from the agency, MDHS. You're going to have the client, and you're going to have a hearing officer. The hearing officer's role is to be an independent decision maker. So you're going to allow the client to present their proof, and then you're going to allow the agency to present their proof. The hearing officer will ask questions to try to determine where the truth is. And that's the way the process works. So what I would say to clients who have a fair hearing, basically don't show up at the fair hearing with all of your complaints. Show up at the fair hearing with your evidence, because that's what we're looking for. If the agency made a decision that is not correct, we need evidence to correct the problem.
So along those lines, fair hearings happened, you've come down. What kind of determination may come down, and how is that, once that ruling is there, what's the resolution method?
Well, okay. Typically, and all of the hearing offices are different, but typically the goal of the fair hearing is to try to resolve the issue. I mean, sometimes a client has been denied because they did not submit all of the information that was needed. But a representative from the agency oftentimes will call the client before the fair hearing and say, if you get us this information, we can process your case, and a fair hearing is not necessary. If that happens, then the fair hearing is abandoned. Sometimes the agency representative will call the client and they're able to resolve the issue. And if they resolve it, then the client can withdraw their fair hearing. If it's not abandoned, if it's not withdrawn, then the next two options, I'm either going to deny the request or I'm going to grant the request. So if we grant the request, I mean, basically the client has met their burden of proof and what they are saying is true, and the agency is going to take whatever action is necessary to process their case. If I deny it, basically the client did not meet their burden of proof, and the agency's decision will stand.
So in speaking to how this process works together, the cross-divisional collaboration, is there anything else we've kind of missed? Because it's kind of been woven throughout our discussion, but I want our listeners to really understand how this is an ongoing conversation, not only externally with our clients and our partners, but it's interesting to see how you guys all stay connected in conversation and have created some processes along those lines. Is there anything about that collaboration piece that we need to hit on else?
I guess here's what I would say. I would say that we are a team. Administrative hearings could not function without investigations, analytics, and BRU. So as a team, we are constantly collaborating to try to make the system better for the clients, better for the agency, better for everyone.
I appreciate that
I
passion.
would add to that, not only are we a team and we're working together, but we're also collaborating with other divisions. We have to have the knowledge and understanding of how the programs work in order for us to be that impartial integrity piece. And so MDHS is a team altogether. And then I would also say for the clients to make sure you are reading, make sure you're understanding, and as we've already said, don't hesitate to ask questions. A lot of time from the benefit recovery unit standpoint, it's a lot of not understanding exactly what they're applying for and not understanding the rules and regulations. So I would just say make sure you are reading and understanding.
And to pick up what she said,
Love it. I love it.
you know, when we're working with other divisions, I know in investigations, if we see a weakness in their policy or something that could be tightened up, these other division directors are willing to sit down with us and hear us out when we say, hey, this needs to be a little more clear or it needs to be tightened up to not be so vague. They're taking note and they're applying that. And about our process, about how it goes, investigations, BRU, and hearings, there's one thing I forgot to mention where, you know, I think I brushed on it, is prosecutions.
Yes.
And so there is another route to where Telvester's group won't hear it. If it's egregious enough, we review the case and we will refer to the local DA and the judicial districts to prosecute these cases.
That speaks to some of the, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm glad I have some attorneys and some law enforcement and some accounting components here with me, and a lot of terms I don't understand. I'm just a layman. But the difference between some of these may be civil cases and some may be criminal cases, Telvester. Where's that determination? Is it a dollar value? Is it the actions of the individual? What might help determine what's a civil or a criminal?
It could be both. It could be a dollar amount. I mean, if you have a substantial dollar amount, then that could lead to criminal prosecution. For example, I think if it's like over $25,000, we're going to look at that case and actively see whether or not that case would be better served coming through administrative hearings, or is this a case based on the actions are so egregious that this person needs to be prosecuted. So it could really be both, to answer your question.
What might some of those penalties be if it is a criminal action?
I will answer that.
Go ahead.
One thing that I failed to mention, after Telvester's group and the Division of Administrative Hearings actually makes a decision, especially on their disqualifications, the Benefit Recovery Unit is responsible for entering all of those disqualifications into our federal system, what we call EDRS, especially for our SNAP program. And so we do have clients who are disqualified from that program, and that could be a year, 2 years, or permanently.
So if somebody does commit fraud, some of those penalties could not only be repayment, which will happen, no matter what type of error or fraud it is. The other could be jail time. We've seen that with some of the plea bargains that your team has worked with the DAs to get. But again, disbarment or permanent or temporary disqualification. And let's go there, Debrisha, because disqualification, a lot of people think that there aren't punishments. These benefits are here to support families, but the actions of one individual could potentially affect many.
Absolutely. Like I said, we depended on the decision that our Division of Administrative Hearings makes. if they find that a client or an entity actually intended to defraud that program, then there are penalties. There are disqualification penalties, and you also have to pay that restitution back. So it's not one or the other, it's actually both.
Okay.
And I would like to add to what she said, like with SNAP disqualifications, for example. For the first offense, you are going to be disqualified from the SNAP program for 1 year. Second offense, you're going to be disqualified for 2 years. Third offense, you're going to be disqualified permanently. So yeah, there are definitely consequences if you commit an intentional program violation, and there are serious consequences.
And that, again, hopefully serves as a preventative measure versus a reactive measure.
But we also want to say that that penalty implies to the adult because we don't want to penalize the children. And so the children can still actually benefit from the programs, but the adults who actually committed that intentional program violation will be penalized.
And that is, again, working through processes, though, to make sure that if that adult has perpetrated that once the child still may receive some of those benefits, there are safeguards in place to prevent future fraud as well.
Yes.
And you know, Mark, the other piece that I want to talk about is, I think sometimes the public perception is that if people are receiving SNAP benefits, they are just lazy, taking advantage of the system. Actually, what I see in these hearings, I see people who genuinely have fallen on bad times and they need SNAP benefits to survive, to feed their children. You know, there is some fraud in the system, but I see fewer people trying to take advantage of the system than I see people who genuinely need the system. You have people who are homeless, you have people who lose their jobs, you have people who have medical disabilities, and you have elderly people who cannot work. So I want to make sure that we don't miss that part as well.
Exactly. I think statistics will show you over the past 5 years the amount of recoupments has increased, and that's speaks to the importance of building a strong Office of Inspector General. But let's just say it's $650 million a year in SNAP benefits are dispersed through the agency. Last year, I believe it was a little over almost $6 million was recouped overall through the agency across all of those programs. So percentage-wise, we're not talking about significant amounts of money. It's more of, unfortunately, the few become a picture of the most, and we want to paint a different picture. 99% of our clients believe in program integrity because they understand the importance of these programs. And to Vester, that speaks to the empathy that is built within OIG, to the culture of this agency, that we want to be, obviously, protective of these benefits. But I see this in all three of you. You want to be redemptive. You want to be restorative, and that process is there. There may be a disqualification for a year, Debricia, but there is an opportunity to come back and work within the program to benefit the family and the individual as well.
And I will add a final piece to that. Before we expect these clients to, repay the benefits out of their pocket, our first line of recovery is from their actual benefits, because like we said, we have specific penalties, but it doesn't permanently disqualify them that first time around. And so when we are recovering and recouping those funds, we first try to take it out of their current benefits that they're receiving.
So shifting there, we've tried to move to the idea of prevention, and we want the element of also hope within accountability to provide prevention. I want to start with you, Debricia, maybe some tips that you can give our listeners to either identify fraud or also prevent it. And we are obviously talking to policymakers and leaders across the state, but also to the client that we may pull something. What are some tips you have? And then we'll go to Josh and to Vester for prevention of fraud and making the agency aware and also holding this agency accountable to the highest standard.
My tip would be, like I previously said, to just understand the actual application, read, make sure you are answering your questions thoroughly. Don't just check a box and say, okay, I'll go back later, because you checking the incorrect box may result in an overpayment.
Thank you. Josh?
Yeah, I would have to echo the same thing of just, doing the right thing, especially when no one's looking, because you're the one filling out that application. I can't tell you how many times I've heard stories from the investigators at the moment they're doing the investigation or interview with the clients, and sometimes these investigators want to get to the heart of it and go, well, why? You've been a recipient for 10 years. And you've been doing this for the bulk of it. Why? What point did you decide to do this? And like what Tavessa was saying is that they go, I wouldn't be eligible. I have kids to feed. I did it out of necessity. And so just have that thought though that you may get away with it years, but eventually time runs out and you may get caught and have to face that penalty. And just avoid all that. Just report what you're supposed to report. Let the chips fall where they may. And if you're not eligible, you're not eligible. It's not worth, going to jail and potentially not seeing the kids for years, and that just compounds and makes it much worse. So just do the right thing at the beginning.
Yeah, the power to want to support your family is strong. One of the things I've noticed as I've visited our county offices, I think I've visited about 50 of them so far in 4 years, is our case managers, our eligibility workers, they're looking for ways to help people. And if you're not eligible, they still understand the resources that are maybe local in that community, the local food banks, the local food pantries, other support entities that are there to support the families, so that you don't feel like you have to perpetrate some form of fraud to become eligible to support your family. There are other support entities, and our eligibility workers in those county offices are capable of pointing them in many of those directions. In fact, I'll give you an example. In Yalobusha County, we have an employee who actually started a food pantry and clothing closet right there in the county office to help people as they came in for their immediate needs. That's the compassion that's inherent and really building within this agency, and that I hope people see through even our investigations team. So, Sylvester, I go to you. What are some of those tips that you've seen? You see the other side of it. People are now telling you, here's what went wrong. Why did it go wrong? Please help me. What are some tips you have?
Well, I guess the first thing I would say, in order to have an intentional program violation, there's intent. So the way to counteract intent, in my mind, is communication. The caseworkers do the best that they can. A lot of our caseworkers are overworked, and sometimes you may have to call them 2 or 3 times to provide the information that you need. So I would say either upload your information to the portal, communicate with your caseworker. So if somebody is looking at your case, they don't see 3 applications where you reported no income when in fact you were actually working. So just communication. I think will solve at least 50% of the problems that exist.
And I will add to that, if you actually feel like that you actually qualified, utilize the fair hearing resource, utilize the due process. We encourage people to do that. So,
I thank y'all for being here today. It's been insightful, hopefully informative to our listeners, educational, and I go back to that key word, preventative. We want to make sure that we're protecting the integrity of the programs administered on behalf of the taxpayers to support the citizens and families of Mississippi. And I thank you for the work that each of you do, the passion by which you do it, the compassion by which you live, but the integrity that you bring and encourage me personally every day in your work. Thank you for being here.
thank
Thank
you.
you.